Most people think life follows a straight line: education, career, retirement. But for many, that line changes, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and sometimes by a moment they never expected. This is not finished yet. A podcast about people who started again and discovered their most interesting chapter was still ahead. Each episode shares real stories of reinvention, the risks, the decisions, and what it actually takes to build something new later in life. Because the truth is, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Can I just add that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of any organisations, employers, or partners connected to them. Before we start, a quick note. A large number of people who listen to the podcast haven't yet subscribed. If you find these conversations valuable, hit subscribe or follow on your platform. It makes a huge difference and helps us keep sharing these stories. Now, let's get into this week's story. So, I think here we are. I'll cut out, so don't worry about any of the over chat. We'll cut out what we need to cut out. But look, just a quick intro from me. Welcome to all the listeners again to Not Finished Yet. I'm Mark Kennedy, 35 years director level, and I'm fascinated by people who are not scared to reinvent themselves, as I've had to do myself many times over the latter years. Many struggle with this as they see it as a failure. Today, Nandita, is it Nandita?
Yes.
Nandita, we've got Nandita on the podcast. Let's explain a little bit about yourself. 25 years climbing to the top, C-suite, and then everything changed. The story's about success, and then what happens after that. So, welcome, Nandita. Thank you for coming on and telling your story. If you don't mind, we'll just dive straight in. If I met you 10 years ago, who was Nandita? What can you tell me about yourself?
Yeah, who was Nandita 10 years ago? I was climbing the corporate ladder, very success-driven, ambitious. Success was defined by everything external around me. And so the size of my house and the size of my bank account and my title, the car that I was driving, the shoes I was wearing, that was what I was really going for. It was how I was raised. I'm a first generation immigrant, and we're from India, and we're taught to put our heads down and work really hard and, not be in the spotlight, just be under the radar, but work really, really hard. You've got to be the most indispensable employee that there is. And so that's what I did. And I achieved all of those successes externally. Internally, I was pretty darn empty and passionless and kind of unhappy with life in general. That was me 10 years ago. Externally fabulous, internally pretty empty.
Yeah. So you moved to the US, was it 21?
Yeah.
Yeah, 21. So was it the feed of ambition of success, of money, or ambition of status? What drove you to success back then? What drove you to succeed? What was your driving? Yeah, your drive.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things. I didn't know anyone when I came to the US, and so I had to make it on my own, and I had to make my parents proud. They had invested a lot of time and effort and resources into sending me here. I came here to do my grad school, and so I really needed to build my life. And you're raised to believe success is your benchmark for success is really driven by the size of your bank account and the house and all of those external metrics that I just talked about. And so that's what I was driven by.
So when you reached that C-suite, that success, did it feel how you expected? What I mean by that is, were you happy or just achieving?
No, I was just achieving. I certainly wasn't happy. I mean, I'm not saying money does buy a certain amount of happiness. It's nice to have luxury and be able to afford things without thinking twice about having to spend money. Absolutely. But did that truly excite me internally? Was I really on a mission that I was passionate about and feeling like I was making an impact in this world? No, I was just chasing somebody else's definition of success.
So without trying to repeat, but how much of your identity was tied to
All
the
of it,
performance?
all of it,
100%
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you wonder,
Absolutely.
it's like if you're no longer so and so's mom and you're no longer so and so's wife and you're no longer the CEO of this company, then who are you? What is your identity? And that's kind of where I stepped. That's the place I was in when I got closer to my 40s, where I stepped back and my kids didn't need me as much. And I was in a marriage that I really was unhappy in for a very long time, but I stuck with it because, again, your status and the right thing to do is to stick it out. Um, but it was a real shift in me identifying who am I, what do I want to do, what is my intrinsic value in this world, and stepping into it.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. You describing your 40s as everything
Yeah.
starting to unravel, I believe you said. So what was happening? I mean, let's talk about the premenopause because people just don't want to talk about that. How did that feel physically and
Yeah,
mentally
it
for you?
was. I've been in the health and wellness space my entire career. For 20 years, I've been surrounded by medical providers, and so I understand the concept of perimenopause was not new to me. I've read books, but the concepts when you have in your head and actually living through it is a completely different ballgame altogether. And so as I got closer to 40, it's an interesting time because your body changes, your mind changes all of a sudden. There was a period of time where I was a badass person in the boardroom. I mean, I could balance all these different plates at the same time. I was super mom at home. I never dropped a ball. I was so successful, and that was my identity. And then I came closer to 40 and I was forgetting things, and I was, forgetting meetings and showing up late and forgetting where I'd put my glasses and forgetting to pick my kid up from school after her activities. And I was like, who is this person now? What is happening? And you look at yourself in the mirror and you've put on some weight that you're exercising just as much as you did, you're eating the same, healthy lifestyle, but all of a sudden you put on weight and you have night sweats and depression, and you kind of tend to not recognize this person who's standing in front of you that you've been your entire life, at least the life that you've known.
So you didn't really recognise the symptoms. Did you think there was something wrong with you, or did you understand the symptoms of
I
what was
had
happening
heard
to you?
some of the symptoms, but the change and the emotional roller coaster you go on, you cannot you cannot put that in a book. You've got to actually live it to understand what is happening. And it's different for every single woman. It's not the same. There's a myriad of symptoms that one goes through, and it's not talked about. And so you feel like you're pretty lonely on this journey. I went and met my doctor, as you normally would. When you're sick, you go see, or you feel like something's off, you go see your doctor. And he kind of dismissed me, saying, maybe I just needed to go out with my girlfriends and have a glass of wine. And he did suggest an antidepressant, which at that point I knew I wasn't depressed. That wasn't it. And so, what did I do? I came back home, and there were many nights that I would just cry myself to sleep and not know what was going on. I was married to an incredible human being, but he was going through his stuff. And so I didn't feel like I could share with him what I was going through. It was a very, very lonely period of time. Um, and then,
So why do you
yeah,
think?
no, go
Sorry,
ahead
go
with your
carry on.
questions.
I was going to say. So why do you think so many women go through this kind of silently? Why is that? It doesn't seem to be. Your doctor didn't help. Do you feel that, or do you feel? Sorry, maybe I'll rephrase the question. Do you feel that women go through this silently, and there's not spoken about
Yeah,
enough
it's
help
not spoken
around
about
this?
enough. I mean, the medical model in the United States of, just so you know, women spend over 50% of their lives in perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. And doctors in medical school get less than 6 hours of education on this phase, right? So there's a lot of research and money that's put into fertility of a woman during those years, her childbearing years. And then once you hit perimenopause and you're no longer fertile, you're almost like cast aside. We're not going to focus as much on this stage of your life, which is 50% of our lives. And so, not only was that doctor just not aware of how to help me, he didn't do that intentionally. He just wasn't educated on what to look for. And so, if it's not talked about by your doctor and they don't identify it, then you go back home thinking there must be something wrong with you, right? And women in general don't talk about it because there's
Yeah.
so much shame around these changes that happen. Um, Also, we've spent the first half of our lives kind of being these amazing, holding everything together, and that becomes our identity. And now there's shame associated with who is this new human being who is not who I've known her to be. We're no longer holding the household together. And so there's a lot of questioning and internal dialogue and shame associated with this phase.
So you haven't got to answer this because it's quite a personal question, but I thought you mentioned it yourself. So at the same time as your body was changing, your marriage was too. What was going on there? You know, you stayed for 8 years, even though you're unhappy. I've been in the same situation, see, so I've been through, we under why really, I was probably living, I don't think I was living my life. I was probably managing expectations. How did it sit for you? What was going on there?
The partner I was married to is an incredible human being. I mean, we have such an amazing co-parenting relationship. We just grew. We met when we were 24. We met when we were 21. We got married when we were 24, and we just grew apart. As you get older, things that are important to you change, and your priorities change. And I stuck it out. We both stuck it out, knowing we were unhappy because we have children, and we both come from India, and there's a certain amount of, you suck it up and you do what it takes, and you kind of shove things under the rug and do your best to make it happen. And so that's what I did for the longest time until, again, I was living life on everybody else's terms outside of mine, until I decided it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It certainly wasn't the life I wanted to show my kids, right? You lead by example, and I didn't want my kids to think that's what a happy marriage looks like. And so we both decided it was time to separate.
Do you think that comes apparent a lot with people with two separate careers? Do you think that dominates sometimes the split in the relationship? I've had that experience. See, that's why I'm just asking. Do you feel that was
No,
an
separate
issue or
careers,
wasn't
I
an
wouldn't
issue?
say was an issue. It was certain basic values I think are important when you get into a marriage. I think when you get in really young, you kind of you're so struck by love and infatuation and all the things that are important, but you kind of tend to look the other way for certain basic foundational values that are really imperative in keeping a relationship going long term. And I think that's where we fell apart, was recognizing some of our foundational values weren't the same. Yeah.
Okay. Well, next moving on. Again, these are quite personal questions, but you've opened up to them
Yeah.
on your on your bio. So there's a moment
Say
with
that
your
one more
daughter.
time. You
Can you
broke
take
up.
us back there? Is that possible? Sorry, there's a moment with your
Yeah.
daughter. Can you take us back there?
I talked about how I came back home after the doctor and just felt like I was maybe going crazy. And there were many nights that I would just be at home and kind of on the couch and not happy. And there was one, pretending. I thought I was pretending to be okay. And then my daughter came to me. She was 8 at that time and sat down beside me and said, "Mom, you look really, really sad. You've looked sad for a while. Is there something I can do to help you?" And that moment was really hard for me. That was my rock bottom, because here was my 8-year-old that I'm supposed to mother. I'm supposed to lead by example. And she was coming to me asking how she could support me. And I recognized that's it. I was just sitting in this place of a victim, expecting, I don't know what, was somebody from the outside going to come and save me? I don't know what I was expecting, but I recognized in that moment that if anybody needed to step out of this space and make something happen or make certain changes, it had to be me. And so that kind of was the driver for me to really step out of where I was and say, what can I do about it? I felt this way long enough. I know I'm not going crazy. What can I do?
Yeah, because I was going to say to you, what shifted after that? What what
Well,
focused your mind after that?
I
What
did a ton
happened?
of research. I did a ton of deep diving. I worked with a team of functional medicine providers and doctors. I was really grateful to be surrounded by them. And so they looked at my hormones and recognized certain medical, you know, anomalies within my numbers and data, and they were able to get that more balanced, and that helped a lot. And then there was a day that I went to the park, I remember, with my kids, and there was a mom there, a total stranger, and I had a meltdown in front of her, and I just kind of broke down and shared with her how depressed I was and lonely, and how nobody could understand what was going on. And it was interesting because she looked at me and said she was going through the same thing. And then I was standing in line at a grocery store and talking to another mom, and she said she was feeling the same thing. And I recognized that the more women I spoke to, when I talked about it openly and shared, it almost gave them permission to share with me. They almost felt like, okay, I'm not crazy, you're not crazy, we get to talk about it. And that's kind of how this whole thing started. I recognized that people were just not talking about it, and there's so much shame associated with it. And then once I found my group of women, and I felt a certain amount of safety and comfort in being able to talk about it, and I had the functional medicine team supporting me with my hormones, I learned certain nervous system rebalancing, practices that I was able to include. And then a lot of mindset shifting, so much mindset shifting around my identity, recognizing who I am and what I'm here to do, what excites me, what drives me, letting go of this stable C-suite salaried position that I'd had for 25 years, that I worked so hard to build, that my parents were so proud of, that I was so proud of, to say, I'm going to pack that up and start as an entrepreneur. Never run a business before, starting from scratch. I can scale business, I can scale companies, but to actually take the risk of starting my own business, oh my God, was petrifying.
Yes, it's a very yes, it's a story next to me, because I was what I would consider in my early life a manager of managers. I'd go in to manage other people's companies, and I would be the
Yep.
MD or whatever director role of those companies. So I didn't have much skin in the game, if any, in some of my early roles. Just lucky to fall in and I suppose break my teeth on other people's businesses. So I understand exactly where you're there. But so on that, you've mentioned it. You walked away from this C-suite role, your marriage, everything you built, really. And most people would call this as a loss. But you mentioned that you call it your beginning. Can you
Yeah, I
expand
mean,
on that?
I got to step
Why?
into
Why
who
was that?
I am today, and it is the most liberating feeling ever to not be shackled down by all of these external expectations, and saying the right thing to please somebody, to actually speak your mind and say what you want to, and not be as concerned about how it's received, is incredible. And I think it comes as you get older. You've earned all this wisdom because of your years of experience, that you recognize you can really stand in your power and say what you have to say, and it holds legitimacy because you've lived it. It's your lived experience. And so it's okay to fall apart in front of somebody and not be all put together. It's because that makes you more relatable. Being vulnerable, I always viewed as a weakness, when really it's a strength, because that's how people connect with you. They relate to you, is by you being messy and sharing that there are moments where you fall apart too. Right. And that's what happened in that park, is where I was a total mess. And she was like, oh my God, thank
Yeah,
you for opening up, because this is how I feel too. So
yeah, giving her
yeah.
that right to be able to reply. Really. So, the purpose of this, one of the main purposes of the podcast is for listeners to really, who are going through similar circumstances, but they're probably at the stage that, well before you are. So what, for
Gosh,
them, what
the
fears did you have
fear
to
of
overcome?
rejection, the fear of failure what if I started this company and it fell flat? What is everybody else going to say about me? How do I appear in this world? The fear of staying small. I didn't want to be seen or heard. I was taught to kind of fly just under the radar. And so now to actually hold my space and know my identity and talk about it confidently, being an imposter, I was so worried about everybody looking at me and saying, what does she know? But I do know. And it's because I've lived it.
So, to make a decision like that when everything looks really perfect, how do you do that? How do you focus yourself to do that? Because everything was perfect in your world, wasn't it? You had money, you had a good role, family.
Well, I just couldn't deal
So
with it
how do you
anymore. I
make
was
that decision?
miserable inside. And so it was a lot of recognizing that I could not live the rest of my life like this. And it took a lot of courage, it took a lot of digging deep and trusting, having faith that you've got to follow your heart, and the universe is going to be behind you and let you soar. There are moments even today where I wake up and I'm so happy with my mornings. I'm like, I actually have time to sit down and drink my coffee and do my meditation and my journaling. It's like I'm not on this constant, oh, my meeting starts at 8 and then I've got a 9 and my schedule is jam packed. And so I love my mornings. And there are certain times I wake up in the morning and say, and freak out because I don't have this jam packed schedule that I'm so used to having. My success was so tied to these results, measurable results, that now sometimes I don't have, because a lot of my day is spent in connecting with other women and talking to them and building relationships, which is so deeply satisfying, but there's not always a specific measurable result at the end of that day. It's further down the line, right? So
You did start speaking up. You said in the park there, and
yeah.
other women said, me too. I've got the same issues. So that must have felt like amazing. But what was the moment
No,
purpose
it was
clicked in
then.
for you?
It was
Was
then
it then,
when
or was
I
it
recognized, I
further down the
realized
line?
how miserable other women were, but just not talking about it. And it's so ridiculous because 100% of women are going to go through perimenopause and menopause. There's no question about it. You're going to go through this. So why not support yourself and educate yourself with the resources that there are out there so you feel empowered enough to go through this phase versus just kind of, with your head in the sand, hoping it doesn't happen when it is going to happen.
Well, you know, then,
Yeah.
tell us,
Yeah.
you move on. So tell us about SolWomen, is it?
Yes.
SolWomen?
So
What are you
SolWomen
actually helping women
is
do?
a grassroots
What's the
level movement. It's all about educating and empowering women as they transition through this phase of midlife. We also spend a lot of time educating men on how to support their women in this phase, because initially we were kind of focused on women, but we had a lot of the men reaching out to say, how I want to support my partner. How do I do it? Or sometimes the men would listen to a podcast and the women don't know anything about it, but they're going through all of these emotions. And then the men say, hey, listen to this podcast. Maybe this is what you're going through. So we really opened it up to men and women. There are three pillars that are imperative to walking through this transition in a really empowered manner. One is functional medicine. Do you know much about functional medicine, Mark? Okay, so functional medicine is,
No,
I guess you could
please
call it
go on.
alternative medicine or holistic medicine. You're looking at the body as a whole. And so you look at your gut. Your gut is connected to your hormones and they're connected to your brain. So it's like your body is all interconnected, right? You're not going to one specialist for your gut and a different specialist for your hormones and a third specialist for how your brain is working. It's all interconnected. And so functional medicine is great because they do a series of foundational lab tests. They look at your diet, your lifestyle, your nutrition, your nutrient levels, and they help balance all of that. So I have a team of functional medicine doctors that I work with on the physical aspect of a woman's transition. That's one pillar. The second one is mindset. We talked about the importance of understanding your new identity in this half and really stepping into it. The other aspect of mindset is women are so used to taking care of everyone else first before they put themselves front and center. So that gets to shift. In your 40s, if you don't take care of your body, you're just going to be so depleted, you cannot take care of anyone else. So that shift needs to happen, and we walk them through that. That's the second mindset component. And the third one is community, bringing women together where they feel safe to actually speak up and feel supported, learn how to really balance and regulate your nervous system is one of probably the most important things you can do. There is no supplement or pill out there that will help you regulate your nervous system. It's a practice that you have to learn to do. And we walk them through all of that. And so we do retreats in Austin. We do 1 day, 3 day retreats. People fly in to do them. We also have a membership program where we help women transition through this phase. We work with them on all of these different elements to help them.
Oh, excellent. We'll put some of the links below when we put that in. But as a man living with a premenopausal woman, what advice have you got for me?
Yeah,
What
I
what
would
do I
say
need to
educate yourself, educate
help
your
with to
partner
understand?
that, it can start as early as 35. So perimenopause is a good 10 years before you hit menopause. And kind of the average age is about, 52, 53 is when women hit menopause. And so you're looking at anywhere from 35 plus, you get into this phase of perimenopause. So educate yourself, just sitting down and asking your partner what they're going through, and not always trying to fix it. I think men come from you have a problem, let me fix it. And women speak a slightly different language where they just want to be acknowledged and empathized with. And so just listen to us. Taking on some of the chores at home is such a huge part of partnership, particularly in this phase, because women tend to take it on and feel like it's their responsibility to run the household. And they are so busy with work and kids and household during this phase, particularly. I think divvying up and saying, what can I take on? What can you take on? So they feel like there's more of a partnership when it comes to just overall tasks is a huge help. Doing something fun, set aside time to just connect, for the two of you to connect. Put it on your calendar, schedule it, even though it may seem silly, put it in. It needs to be a non-negotiable. Do something fun, go dance, get outside, go work out. Whatever it is that makes you, the two of you bond and reconnect is so important. I would say also when it comes to understanding, libido is a big thing that is not talked about during this phase. Women's libido tends to tank. Men's testosterone also tanks in this phase, but men can go get a testosterone shot, and it's like they're 19 years again and ready to get it going. But women take about three months ish for their hormones to balance, and it's one of the biggest causes for divorce during perimenopause and menopause, is because the man and the woman are on two different playing fields, and they're so uncomfortable to talk about it. So being comfortable talking about it is again a really important thing, and understanding that men need the physical act, right? The intimacy to then feel connected. A woman needs to first feel the emotional connection to get ready to do the act. Again, they're two different languages, and recognizing that is important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's go back on to what you're doing in Soul Woman, Women. What's really happening? Do you feel to high achieving women in the middle of that no one
I
talks
think they're
about?
balancing so
What's
many
happening in
different
their lives at the
balls in
moment?
the
What have you
air.
learned?
Some of them are dropping. They're ashamed about it. They don't want to talk about it. It's all held within them, where they're questioning who they are, and they're struggling through it. They're really kind of shut off, disconnected from their body, and they're struggling in their marriages. They're struggling with keeping their act. It's all an act. It's a pretense that they're so good at. And it's kind of, you're seeing cracks in that facade that they've got.
Excellent. Okay. Well, look, I'm going to go back on to a couple of just insights about, because of the level you've been at, and because you're starting as an entrepreneur, you end up sometimes very successfully being back at the level that you you got away from. In some respects, you can be difficult. But there's a couple of things that you mentioned. You said that you can't
Yeah,
scale
well,
your
we're so good at
way
scaling
out of burnout.
companies, but as you get
What does
to
that mean?
your mid 40s, if your body and your mindset is not fully taken care of, your company is going to come crashing down because there's only so much you can do. We talked about the cracks in the facade. Those cracks are going to widen. And if you don't take care of yourself, if your cup is not full, you cannot pour into everyone else. And it's only a matter of time before your body crashes. So don't get there. There are so many tools out there that you can take advantage of in your 30s and your 40s that will really empower you to continue scaling your business. You can do both. You do not have to fully give up your business to take care of your health. You can, it's a balancing act.
So, with your experience, then, and what you've achieved, why do you feel that high achieving women often are still the loneliest in the room? I think you might have put it. Why do you feel that? I mean, we do a lot on the other podcast around women in construction, trying to move people into a very masculine arena. Is it still the
Yeah, I mean,
same,
you know that
masculine
being at the
world,
top
or why
is
do
a
you think
fairly
that?
lonely place to be, right? Regardless, because you're leading the company and you cannot be friends with the people under you, and so it's a pretty lonely place to be. Women in general are so used to being in their masculine when you're this type A, high functioning executive. You cannot allow vulnerability to show. And when you have no vulnerability, there's less connection, there's less deeper connection, because again, everybody looks at you thinking you've got your act together, everything is just perfect, and that makes you less relatable.
So, do you feel that is any different than you? Do you think it's still that case just for women? Because I feel some of that sometimes. I sit here thinking, God, if
Right.
I, everyone thinks that you drive your ship in the one
Yeah.
direction, it's a straight line, and business is nothing like that. If it was, everybody would be doing it. So do you feel it's any different? Is there
I
anything
think men,
outside of what we're
it's a
talking about that
fairly
makes
similar
it
story
different
for men
for
too.
women?
There are lots of communities that are put together to support men and brotherhood, where they come together and entrepreneurs are talking about, a variety of issues. I think women are, in general, a lot more emotional and have varying regulations of emotions as the month goes by, right? Men have a very different cycle. It's like the cycle that you go through morning to night is the same cycle you're going to go through tomorrow. Whereas women and their hormones, it's a monthly cycle. And so how you feel the beginning of the month is very different from halfway through the month. And having somebody to speak to about that and relate with and be able to share is really important. I think women's health is impacted a lot more in midlife when they're trying to hold it all together and they're not able to. Men, not as men too. I'm not gonna, I'm more of an expert on women, so I'm just gonna speak to women. What I found is women tend to fall apart unless they're able to really take care of their health
Yeah.
and start leaning into the feminine side of sharing and opening up and having deeper connections.
Brilliant. Okay, so what,
Gosh,
in your opinion, what does stop
freedom. It
performing
looks
and
like
start
freedom. It looks
living
like
actually
fun
look like?
and play and not just being on this hamster wheel. You get to step off of it and put time into your day that you enjoy. Do something that lights you up. Find purpose in what you're doing. And start something. Don't just be so scared to move forward. Don't let fear hold you back so much that you just sit back there and wonder, what if I had taken that step? Do it. Life is short and you get to live every moment. I mean,
So what's the
external
cost of success
success,
if you don't
or
address this?
really truly, I think each one defines success on their own terms. To me, I had all the external success, but it wasn't worth the internal turmoil that I was going through. It wasn't worth the example or the poor example I felt like I was setting for my kids. And so I was willing to let all of that external success go and trust that I had what it takes to really follow my passion and see it through.
Well, fantastic. Just a goal, couple of goals here. Actions for anyone who is listening, or will be listening.
I would say
For
sit
someone
down and do
listening right
some
now and
kind of
feels
vision
stuck,
planning.
what's step one?
Go understand what really excites you and create. Sit in a create space in your day. One, you cannot go from one thing to another and have a jam-packed schedule and really be able to think creatively. So you need to create space in your day. Go on vacation. That's what I needed to go. I went away to Costa Rica for an entire week, and that's where that was my aha moment. It was like, this is the kind of life I want to live, not this hamster wheel life. This is where I feel fulfilled. So find some space in your day or your week and go do some vision planning. See what excites you. Go dabble in a few different things to see what really lights you up. We have a lot of women who have been moms, stay at home moms for a really long time, who are now empty nesters and don't know what to do with their life. And so we really help them with some kind of, coaching where it's like, what lights you up? And then we're able to connect them with somebody who's within that industry to go have coffee with them, go intern, for a week and see, does that still really light you up? And opportunities come around. Partner with a friend. Start talking about things like this that are deeper. Have deeper conversations with your friends, not just superficial conversations that we all have.
Yes. What women in their 30s then, what should they know that would change everything later on? What could you give them advice? What should they start doing to build those blocks in later life if they need to make the change? Because a lot of women are probably
Sure.
fixed in that
Yep.
situation, as you've just said there, where the family is probably the priority, is a young family. So is there anything we can do to prepare, or
Yeah.
maybe,
Well, actionable
rather
steps. I would
than
say if
sit
you're
there one day and
feeling
go,
fairly
oh,
healthy and you're early in your
what
30s,
do I do now?
go get some lab testing done to understand what your foundational levels are. What are your numbers when you're in a really healthy space? And then start tracking them as you move along. So that would be step one. Functional medicine is you can go onto a website called IFM, that's the Institute for Functional Medicine.org. Put in your zip code, they'll find you a doctor in your area. Second thing is really talk to other, if you're unhappy in your career and you have a family to support, I totally understand and respect the importance of having a stable income, but dabble on the side. Go do that coffee date with somebody to understand what is going on in their world. Go to networking events and meet some people who are interesting, talk to them, understand what's happening in other industries. And so that's the second one. The third one would be learn how to manage stress. Stress is not going away. We're all going to have stress. It's probably going to get more as your kids grow up and your business starts flourishing. You need to learn certain nervous system practices to really regulate your stress levels. And that could be as simple as, it varies from person to person. So you've got to find what works for you. It could be meditation. It could be going out for a walk with this, let the sun shine on you. Go out in the morning for a 20-minute walk. Take some breaks during the day. Deep breathing is such an important part of regulating your nervous system. There are several different practices. And then find a group of really good friends, women who have some deep conversations. The whole, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. We're so tired of those conversations. Those are great to have. And we all have so many of those friends, but find your core group that you can get messy with. You can share all of your, secrets with, and they support you. And truly, you guys rise together. That's such a core element of just community and feeling like you belong is such a big component to longevity in general.
So now we've got, yourself who can stand there and give advice for what you've gone through to other women, and that's what you're doing. Is there any one thing you wish someone had said to you earlier, or when you stepped
Have
off
more
that
fun
plane
in
at
life.
21, was it? Is there anything you would have
To make
told
fun a
yourself?
non-negotiable,
What would
no
that
matter
be?
what, and to not take life so seriously. I feel like we take life way too seriously, and you get to enjoy the ride. Yeah.
Good
I would
advice.
define
So today,
success as
what would
living
you
life on
define
your
as
own
success,
terms.
having gone
Defining
through that?
what makes you truly happy internally and going for it. Yeah. What did I read the other day? There was a saying, and I feel like I'm going to butcher it, but courage is living life on your terms when everybody around you tells you to live it differently. So, yeah. Yeah. My second
Good.
act.
So what does the second half look
So
like now for
exciting.
you?
I
It's Act
love,
Two.
I'm
What does
so
it look
grateful
like?
to say that I love my life. This is the healthiest I've ever been. This is the most satisfied, career wise that I've ever been. I have dedicated time for fun. I have dedicated time to spend with my kids. I'm a lot more present in my day to day life. I have some deep connections with my friends. And I'm helping the world. I'm making an impact in this world. I feel like I'm going to leave it in a better place than the way I came into it. And my kids, I want my kids to enter a world. I have a daughter. I want her to enter midlife feeling empowered and know what to expect. That would be my biggest gift to myself, would be to leave behind a generation of women who know what it is like and really enter it empowered.
Excellent. What a great ending. Look, really appreciate you coming on. You're a perfect guest for what we're trying to achieve here. You've got a fascinating story, and I look forward to following it. I'll connect to you, obviously, if you don't mind, on LinkedIn, and everyone else can, and we'll put all the information about your business and everything when
Yeah,
the
my pleasure.
episode
I'm so
comes
glad we
out. But
did
like,
this.
really, I do
Thank you for all
appreciate
of
your
your
time.
questions. They were great questions.
I'm really grateful for you coming on. Thank you. Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Not Finished Yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Please see the links to all our socials. Until next time, remember, you're not finished yet.